So in this segment, we're going to do a bit more cringing with Labour, kind of a part two, I guess. And so, Rachel Reeves using the phrase securonomics. Oof, not great. And she's asked by what's her name, Sophie Ridge, about what's a Labour economy going to look like, and Labour just not good here at all.
A little bit about what a Labour economy would look like, because it feels to me like you talk an awful lot, right, about the problems with the country, the housing crisis that you talk about there. You say you want to get state schools on par with the private sector, the NHS.
They're never going to be able to do that, but I respect the ambition.
Yes, you've spoken about at length. And yet you also say you want to keep the public finances under control. I mean, I'm just trying to square these things off. If you're Chancellor after the next election, you're going to inherit a really difficult situation. I think we can have a look at the current government spending projections from the Office of Budget Responsibility, and you can see a squeeze happening post the next election, which we believe could be next year. Are you going to stick to these spending plans set out by the Office of Budget Responsibility?
Well, we're likely to have two more forecasts from the Office of Budget Responsibility before the next election, so I don't think we should be fixated with any particular current forecast, because they'll be updated two more times.
She's right there. If anyone's saying there's going to be a general election this year, I think is very politically naive, in my opinion.
Before we get to the next election. There's no contradiction between being fiscally responsible and wanting to support public services. In fact,
you can't do both though. That's the problem. Like Rishi Sunak's offered a 6% pay rise to public sector workers. That money's not going to come from new money. It's going to come from existing budgets. And so what that means is, schools and hospitals, they're going to have to find that money from elsewhere. So you can't fuel public services without either increasing tax or borrowing more or growing the economy. Growing the economy takes time. Increasing taxes might not be the most popular thing to do, especially given that we're paying the highest tax rates. At least some people are paying the highest tax rates for 70 years, not kind of the upper crust, but kind of, I think, middle and lower earners. So, for Labour to promise to kind of help the public sector doesn't make sense unless you do that through borrowing, which Labour don't want to say. So what they're offering is kind of have your cake and eat it too kind of thing.
For public services, unless you put fiscal economic responsibility at the heart of everything you do.
It's very clear that's what you want to do, to have that fiscal responsibility, that credibility, essential. If you say.
I kind of wish there's a longer clip, but it's fair play. But you can't do both. You can't kind of you can't implement kind of this rabid austerity or continue this kind of austerity and grow the economy. It doesn't work. George Osborne called you're just a crappier version of George Osborne in some senses, because he actually believes the stuff he's saying. Whilst I don't think she does.
What's interesting about this is that the last time we had a government that said fiscal rules, spending limits were at the top of the list, the way they dealt with that was to introduce austerity.
George Osborne.
And by your analysis, you've written, austerity starved the economy of the investment it needs to grow. Austerity failed. But listening to you today, if spending limits, those fiscal rules at the top of your list, by your logic, you might make the same mistake again.
No, this is nothing like what the Conservatives did. It's why, for example, the borrowing to invest is different from borrowing to pay for day-to-day spending. Investing in assets that can grow our economy, it is essential if we want to break out of this doom loop of low growth, high taxes.
But you've just said you'll only do that if you can afford to. And isn't it the case? And you're very proud, I think, of being disciplined on this. But isn't it the case that that discipline means going into the next election, it's very likely that Labour and the Conservatives will basically be following the same kind of tram lines on spending?
Which is true, which is all this fiscal responsibility, all this, well, we can't afford that right now kind of mentality when, we do need to borrow to invest into the economy. And that's the key problem. This idea that Tory austerity will be different to Labour austerity. It won't be that different. To be honest, it'd be probably easier on people on lower incomes, which is definitely really important. Honestly, it's really important. But in terms of growing the economy, it's not going to do a lot. And kind of you had so many kind of Labour politicians saying austerity is a bad idea, but now going back and also pushing austerity, it doesn't fundamentally make any sense. And I think these people are incredibly dishonest. some more here. You know, Rachel Reeves talking to Tory donors, inviting them for one-to-one breakfast. Again, if you want to discuss things that are important, you discuss that over lunch. Lunch being the most important meal of the day. Don't at me. And you know, this is more kind of Rachel Reeves saying stupid stuff.
Houses.
Oops.
This isn't about spending taxpayers' money. This is about unblocking the plan.
This is about, you know, getting more houses built, which again, you need taxpayers' money to the government could start building a lot of housing, and they could use that to build, you know, things like social housing. But you know, apparently we can't do that.
Planning system. It's about offering some form of guarantor for people who are struggling to save a deposit but can afford the monthly mortgage.
A guarantor is someone who would have to pay back the money or would have to fill in for you if you miss your payments. So, you know, if the government wants to be a guarantor, I guess that's something, but I would rather the government, you know, step in and help people into housing, and then from there people can, you know, choose to do right to buy, or they can choose to move out into a different house.
Repayments. This government have blown it when it comes to home ownership. Home ownership is now falling under a Conservative government, and it is clear that it is only Labour now that can help people fulfil their dreams of owning their homes, because it's only Labour that will get builders building again in a way that we need to build those homes for people.
And you know, in my opinion, it's home ownership being aspirational is important, but I think Labour are focusing on aspirational votes, but the problem is I think there's just so many people in this country just struggling to live who can't afford to eat day to day. Like, I think Labour need to offer them something as well, rather than just saying, oh, you know, if you want to buy a house, we'll help you buy a house. You know, if you're kind of in that range where you've got a deposit, which again, you're talking about £15,000 to, you know, have a deposit generally, depending on what you're looking to buy. I mean, yes, those people need help, you know, but, you know, who's more deserving of help? The person struggling to eat, the people struggling to heat their homes, you know, the old timers who've done kind of, you know, worked for the vast majority of their lives and have struggled because of Tory austerity, who can't afford to heat their own homes because of the energy costs and things like that, or the people trying to buy houses. You know, I don't want to divide people here, but I think the priority should be helping those people who are absolutely struggling to live, rather than people trying to buy a house. But that's just me.
There are 1.2 million people on social housing waiting lists right now. Now, if you're not going to spend taxpayers' money on getting houses built, how are the things you're talking about really going to make a difference to that?
Yep.
Well, if you look at home ownership levels, they were once as high under the last Labour government as 70% of people owning their own homes. That's fallen now to...
You know, as we've had a population increase and a lack of house building, that's one of the problems, you know, this idea that we need to kind of unblock planning permission. We have a problem in this country where developers will just buy land and they'll do nothing with it. You know, I've got that same problem literally just outside my house, about 15-second walk, right? I can get there if I walk a bit quick. They paved over, there was like a little field there, they paved over it and they built nothing there. And that land, the company that own it, no doubt that land will go up in value and they'll just sell it at a profit. You know, there's not much stopping developers do that. I think they have like a certain amount of time until they have to build something or sell. But again, if you can hold the land for about 2 years and it goes up in value in those 2 years, you've just made instant profit.
64%. And
but that's not my question.
People...
My question is, if you're not going to spend taxpayers' money building houses, you've been really clear about that, how on earth can you guarantee to our viewers that there are going to be more homes to rent and more homes to buy?
Well, because builders want to build, it's just the planning system.
Again, you know, builders are looking to, I think, build kind of nice houses, you know, 4-bed houses, 3-bed houses with a garage and things like that, stuff that, you know, is kind of difficult to buy if you're an ordinary person because they have much higher sell-on value.
Mitigates against that. The government, of course, got rid of the planning targets, so local authorities now have no obligation, no targets to build new homes, and as a result, those homes aren't getting built. And this has a real economic impact as well. If house building falls in the way that is now expected, that's a £44 billion hit to the UK economy every single year. And many businesses as well say that they struggle to recruit people because people can't afford to live in the places where the jobs are being generated.
But success...
So this is incredibly important.
Maybe if we had better public transport into these areas, it wouldn't be such a big problem. I don't know.
Everybody knows it's important.
You know, I'm not seeing the hope there. We've got this one, false hope is worse than no hope. Labour won't make promises it can't keep. We're straighting, cringe. Again, yeah, promises I can't keep. Great song by Mike Shinoda. Labour will rebuild broken Britain with big reforms, not spending. That's a promise. And again, the economy needs spending. Starmer says, quote, taking seriously the foundations of economic responsibility may not set people's pulses racing, but the new country we can build on top of them will do, end quote. And to reverse kind of the damage the Tories have done will take probably around a decade, maybe more. So, the idea that they're going to grow the economy this quickly and people feel the benefits is simply untrue. It's going to take a long time, and this is a graph we looked at previously, but I just want to look at it again, which is the fact that the idea that we don't have money and whatever, like our debt to GDP post World War II and even before World War II was around 200%. You can see it kind of increased dramatically, kind of post World War One. It takes a while to come down. Post World War II, it comes down, not kind of post World War One, which is interesting because if you think about it, the financial crash was around here. The Great Depression would have been around this area, and debt to GDP actually dips, which is interesting. But point being is that we've had higher debt to GDP ratios before. People who fearmonger about government borrowing and all this stuff, I don't think they really know what they're talking about. Yes, the kind of servicing the debt is very expensive. You don't want to be in a position where you're kind of just borrowing to pay off what you owe. But the only way we're going to get out of this doom loop is borrowing money to invest into the economy and spending it in the right areas in order to generate a return on it. That's what we need to do. But it's just something where the British public have been so conditioned to believe that the economy works like a household when it's more like a business. You have to borrow to invest. There's a reason why all traders know this: speculate to accumulate. You have to spend money to make money. And this idea that we can just make it through just reforms, like what reforms are you going to make that's going to grow the economy by this much, buddy? How much more efficient can you really make things? It's just a joke. They're talking about AI in the NHS and all this other stuff. I'm like, you found like 15 buzzwords and you've kind of jumped on them. You got Labour saying we are laser focused on winning, where they're kind of focusing on message discipline, media training, and the art of campaigning. Where Labour know nothing about message discipline, considering you've got different Labour MPs saying different things on different days. I've covered that in the past over the anti-protest laws. Lammy said one thing, Nandy said another thing, Starmer said a completely different thing, and you're just like, where's the cohesion? Like, you can do all these classes all you want, but your guys, the only kind of messaging you kind of clung on to is the fact that austerity is here to stay, and that if you have more than 3 kids, you're not going to get child support. Child benefits and things like that, which is again not great. Some stuff post-election I want to discuss. Starmer talking about how against kind of ULEZ he is. Kind of in election policy matters. Shock, I didn't think he knew that. We're doing something very wrong if policies put forward by the Labour Party end up on each and every Tory leaflet, despite the fact that Starmer actually supported ULEZ, the ultra-low emission zones, which is just shocking that he's kind of trying to throw Sadiq Khan under the bus, which shows you the kind of man he is and also the people the Labour Party are, especially when, even Phil's criticised him on this, but, the fact is, this is the Tory, ULEZ is a Tory policy that Labour support, and this is something the government have actually forced onto the Labour, onto Sadiq Khan. The immediate, this is from, is it Grant Shapps? Yeah, Grant Shapps saying the immediate reintroduction of the London congestion charge, LES, and ULEZ are urgently bring forward proposals to widen the scope and levels of these charges in accordance with the relevant legal powers and decision-making processes. So this is clearly government policy, something even, what's-his-face wanted? Boris Johnson wanted a while ago. But this is, the face of the two-child cap.
Yeah, the Daily Telegraph.
This is the new MP for Selby, who, privately educated, I believe, went to Oxbridge, etc. He's 25 years old. What does he know of the real world? Probably not much. I'll be honest, he's about my age, but, my life experience and his are very different.
Hi, you've said that we might be on track to a Labour government. Mm-hmm. Would you support that Labour government in its current policy of a two-child benefit cap?
I support the Labour government in that policy. I think we're going to inherit an absolute economic mess from the Conservatives when we take power. We're going to have to make it extremely difficult.
Clement Attlee, I wanted to do the NHS, but we inherited an absolute mess because of Adolf Hitler and people like Winston Churchill and the Prime Ministers before me. So I can't build the NHS, and we're going to struggle to kind of do anything else.
Decisions once we do, and I support the Labour government in doing so 100%.
You see why they picked this kid, because he's on message 100%. He's done his research and he knows exactly what to say. And if you look at why Labour want to keep this, it's the fact that 60% of people support the two-child benefit cap, and this kind of idea that this is the right thing to do based on polls is just stupid. And you kind of, basing this around the fact that people can't change their opinions on things if you push for it. We've seen people's opinions change on Brexit, despite the fact that there's been very little pushback on it. And if you look at, things that people want kind of nationalised or, things like that, nationalisation, at least half of Britain say each of these 9 services we asked about should be run in the public sector. So they want buses, just a bare majority. Or kind of 50% of people want buses to be run by the government, energy, trains, social care, other kind of GP surgeries and things like that, other NHS services, water, GP surgeries, ambulances, fire services. Fire service and ambulance obviously run by predominantly by the public sector. GP surgeries, they're kind of more like a private thing. These are the things people support. Fair enough, this is polling is a bit old, but they want these things run by the government. The public sector. So when is Starmer going to push for nationalisation of these things? And that's the problem with people who just spout polls all day. They don't get it. You can find, you will find polls that go against what you're saying, and even some of the things you support, you'll find polls against it, and people will push you on that. And they'll say, well, why don't you support these things then? And they'll have nothing to say. So this guy Tom Bowell, a bit silly, but previous election candidate, probably is going to run again. Let's be honest. In the next election, and this is kind of the state of kind of Labour's defenders.
So Keir Starmer made 2 pledges, and then he had 10 positions. So there were 10. The 10 what people call pledges were never pledges. They were.
What the fuck, Phil? What the genuine fuck? The title on his own website is literally "My Pledges to You."
So this idea that Starmer didn't have these 10 pledges, he had 10. What does he say? Let's go back quickly. He's got 10 pledges and.
So Keir Starmer made 2 pledges.
2 pledges. Okay, so he had 2 pledges. What were the 2 pledges? We don't know specifically which ones they were.
And then he had 10 positions.
So 2 pledges and then 10 positions.
So there were 10. The 10 what people call pledges were never pledges. They were.
And this is him gaslighting the audience, just like the British public have been kind of gaslit around how the economy works. It's just tragic, honestly. More than 10 years of kind of misinformation about the economy since the financial crash, especially. It just kind of makes me sad, I'll be honest. But what more can you do? You can push back on this stuff. You can say people are kind of gaslighting their audience and gaslighting the public and things like that. But that aside, I just don't know. Maybe this is the right thing to do. I don't know. Maybe we should run campaigns just based on lying and look where the public are and just agree with what the public are doing. If the public want to bring back things like hanging, who are we to tell them they're wrong? I don't know. I don't know what more to kind of do at this point. I'm just lost. Between putting so many hours at work and trying to cover this stuff. I don't have the mental capacity to figure out what to say about Labour as much as I probably did a few months ago, because it's just a state of apathy right now. Will I vote for him? Most likely yes, unless they do something really bad, because again, I live in a Tory first Labour seat. Will I want to speak to my local Lib Dem candidate? Yes. Have I spoken to my local Labour candidate? Yes. Was I impressed by anything she said? No. She just ignored me after like 2 emails, so that broke my heart. But yeah, I don't know what to say. Maybe I'll find out who's the Labour MP for Northampton North, and we'll move from there. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. The Lib Dem candidate for Northampton North. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. Help my pay into the depression fund. But yeah, I'll catch you in the next one.